Before I share my slides with you, give me first the opportunity to say hello to everybody, and I welcome you from Hamburg in Germany. And maybe you can see in the back. This is unfortunately not the view out of my window. As you can see, here is Elbphilharmonie. This is a new or rather new building in Hamburg. And unfortunately, this is not the view out of my window, but I think it's very nice because I have the picture in the back, and I sit in the back of my window, so it looks a little bit as if it was the view outside. But nevertheless, today is sunny weather, and also we are not allowed here in Hamburg to go out. I mean, we are allowed to go out because of the Corona crisis, but only with our relatives. The weather is rather nice today, and this is a very nice. First of all, I'm very sorry that I can't be in Kiev today because of the flights and of the situation as it is. Because I have been to Kiev, as you know, as you probably know, a couple of months ago, and it was a very nice. Opportunity for me. It was not the first time in Ukraine, but it was a very nice time. And I don't know if I told you already. My grandmother, she is from the Ukraine, so I'm a quarter Ukraine as well. And yes, this is something I really like, and that's one of the reasons why I'm very happy when I'm back in the Ukraine. But this is not the topic I wanted to talk to you today. Today, I would like to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. And I heard that you are experts in the field of NGO. So I prepared my slides for today about a general introduction into what is entrepreneurship all about, a strategy in the field of entrepreneurship, and the last slides I also prepared about social entrepreneurship and about NGOs. I don't know how much time I will have. I think I have rather 2 hours, around about 90 minutes to 2 hours. Um, and I would like to have a lecture which is not a frontal lecture for you. I would rather prefer to have a more interactive lecture with you. So whenever you have a question, please feel free to ask. And I would like to come into a fruitful discussion with you. But now I try to open my slides with you. Okay, so hopefully you can see my slides right now. Okay. So as I said to you today, I would like to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. And what you can see here, when you take a look at my slides, you can see the famous, more or less famous castle from Mannheim. Maybe Niklas told you, I and Niklas, we both were PhD students at the University of Mannheim, and this is where we prepared our slides as well. And here you can see the castle, and the University from Mannheim is located inside the castle. And this is one of the oldest castles in Germany and Europe, and it is the second biggest Baroque castle in Europe after Versailles in France. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about entrepreneurship, when we talk about startups, we can say that the current understanding of entrepreneurship is based on the work of the economist Schumpeter. Yeah, and maybe you already heard about Schumpeter during newspapers or in school classes or wherever, we can say that for Schumpeter, an entrepreneur is a person who is willing and able to translate new ideas or inventions into successful innovations. Yeah. So for Schumpeter, entrepreneurship is also something which has to do with innovations and new ideas. Yeah. And he also is of the opinion that the entrepreneur is the cause of changes away from the old balance. He is not an inventor, but an innovator who picks up on new ideas and enforces them, thereby destroying current structures and creating new ones. So destroying all structures is responsible for industrial dynamics and long-term economic growth. Yeah. So what we see here is that Schumpeter, when he talks about entrepreneurship, he says that on the one hand, entrepreneurship has to do with innovations, yeah, and inventions of new ideas, yeah, but it has also to do with destroying current structures and creating new ones, yeah, and this brings us to industrial dynamics and long-term economic growth. So when we do not have entrepreneurs and when we do not have entrepreneurship in general, we won't have a long-term sorry, long-term economic growth, and we won't have new ideas and new perspectives. Yeah, other scientists are, for instance, Knight, Frank H. Knight, and Peter Drucker, and they are of the opinion that entrepreneurship means taking risk. The behavior of the entrepreneur reflects a person who is ready for his idea and his career and his financial security to risk and to take a risk and put a lot of time and capital in the idea. So for the scientists Knight and Drucker, it is not so much the case that we talk about innovations, but it's more about taking risks. And when you are familiar with entrepreneurship, or you know people who already started a startup, yeah, you are familiar maybe with the aspects of taking risks, because especially at the beginning, it's not so certain that your idea is successful at the end of the day. So it means to take a risk is oftentimes a big deal when we talk about entrepreneurship. And another way of looking at entrepreneurship is to look at the process of discovering, evaluating, and exploiting opportunities, which then become objective in the form of business startups. Yeah. So what we also can say is that discovering and evaluating and exploiting opportunities which are out there in the big wide world, if you want to say so, is also some kind of entrepreneurship, and this is another way of dealing with this term. And last but not least, the scientist Pinchot, he said that entrepreneurship is also a kind of entrepreneurship to describe entrepreneurial activity within an organization. So when we talk about intrapreneurship, yeah, we can say that entrepreneurship is also some kind of entrepreneurship within a company. Yeah, that means when you, for instance, have a company, a big company, like for instance in Germany, Henkel or SAP, sorry, or SAP, oftentimes these are big companies which are not so much entrepreneurial because they are forced to stay within the business structure. But nevertheless, they oftentimes have entrepreneurial departments, and this is called intrapreneurship, yeah, where they try to behave like entrepreneurs within this organization. Yeah. So what we can say is, at the end of the day, we have many different aspects responsible for the aspect of entrepreneurship. Yeah, we have the thing like, as I said today, Schumpeter, who said that it is some kind of innovation, yeah, destroying all things, and are responsible for long-term economic growth. We have the opinion that entrepreneurship is also about taking risk. We have the aspect that entrepreneurship is a process of discovering, evaluating, and exploiting opportunities. And last but not least, when we take a look, or when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's also about it's also about talking about entrepreneurship, some kind of entrepreneurship within a company. But what we can say is that entrepreneurs are not inventions of modern times. Yeah, sometimes it seems because of the because of the term entrepreneurship, it seems that this is a very new word or a very new invention. Yeah, but this is not the case. Yeah, when we take a look at entrepreneurs in the past, we can say that already among the Greeks, the Persians, or the Romans, there were innovative minds who pushed new developments: tunneling, bridge construction, sewer construction, medical technology, heating technology, and so on. So what we can say is that entrepreneurship and the idea behind entrepreneurship is not a very new concept. Yeah, it's only that we today speak about entrepreneurship in a different manner. Yeah. When we now, ladies and gentlemen, switch to the question or to a more practical question, what is entrepreneurship at the end of the day all about? Yeah, we can say that first we talked about entrepreneurship in a more theoretical way. Yeah, that we said, well, this could be entrepreneurship and this could be entrepreneurship, but this is more or less an interactive way of looking at the idea behind entrepreneurship. But when we take a look now in a more, let's say, practical way, yeah, we can raise or we can ask ourselves, what really is entrepreneurship all about? Entrepreneurship, from a more practical perspective, is about early movers. Entrepreneurship is about late nights. Entrepreneurship is about late nights that look more like this, and more than 100 hours a week, and small meals, but big visions. Yeah, living in a box, thinking outside the box, finally realizing there is no box. So what we can say when we take a look at entrepreneurship from a more practical perspective, we can say entrepreneurship is about early movers. That means that when you have an idea, sometimes you have to be rather fast to go out in the market, yeah, to take a look if your idea is really successful. Yeah, if you are, for instance, the first mover in the market and not your competitor. Yeah, it's about late nights. Yeah, because when you are an entrepreneur, especially at the beginning, you have to work a lot because there's so much you have to do. Yeah, and oftentimes it is the case that rather at the beginning, your financial or your yeah, you do not have so much money. Yeah, your financing is not very successful oftentimes, and that means that you have to do all the work for your own, maybe with your team, and that means late nights. You have to work, you work and work, especially if you want to have the first mover advantage. That means that you would like or you want to be the first mover in the market and not your competitor. And that means when you do not have so much money to outsource some projects, you have to do the things for your own. And this means, of course, as well, that you need late nights to be successful at the end of the day. You need big visions. What does it mean, big visions? Yeah, it means oftentimes it is the case at the beginning you have an idea, right? And it is oftentimes the case, and I know it from my own experience, that when you talk to other people about your idea, oftentimes people say, oh, I don't believe in this idea, or I don't think this could happen. Yeah, because think about that, think about this, and so on. But you, as an entrepreneur, you need a big vision. Yeah, what you could achieve and what you want to achieve. Yeah, and this can also be a big vision. That means, for instance, yeah, the founder of Airbnb, yeah, for instance, yeah, they had a big vision because they said we would like to make a revolution in the hotel market, and not only in the US but in the worldwide, right? So they really had a big vision what they wanted to achieve, and at the end of the day, they were successful. It's also about small meals. What does it mean? It means that oftentimes at the beginning, you do not have so much financing. And this means you are not able to work so much for other projects where you earn money. And this means you do not have a so big financial, you do not have so much money. Yeah. And it means that at the end of the day it means to have small meals. Then um, at the end of the day it means to be an entrepreneur, thinking outside the box, living in a box, and realizing at the end of the day that means there is no box. That means you have to think about not the normal things. You have to think about what could also happen. For instance, the founder of Airbnb, they do not thought about how to change a hotel, because before they invented Airbnb, there was no real market for renting private flats and houses. And it means the founder of Airbnb, they thought outside of the box, not what could be a new hotel. They thought about what could be a new concept for hotels, renting private flats. That means that as an entrepreneur, you have to think about things which are not common, things outside of a box, what till now nobody did before. And this is also, as I said before, of course, very risky, because if it is a fully new concept, you can imagine that you are not sure, or you can't be sure, if at the end of the day this concept is successful. Yeah. It is about changing lives, changing organization, changing the world. And this is as well what I said with Airbnb. Yeah, it was the case that the founder of Airbnb, they thought about changing organizations, changing the hotel market, changing the world. Yeah, after Airbnb, the world looked so much different compared to before. Yeah. So what we can say is entrepreneurs can be inventors, innovators, designers, coders, financiers, and managers. Yeah. Entrepreneurship can also happen in large established organizations in form of corporate entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, as I said before. And what we also can say is that companies often struggle to remain entrepreneurial over time. And this is what you see when you take a look, for instance, at companies who are very, very old. Yeah, they are oftentimes not unsuccessful. They are successful in a way. Yeah, but what we see is that the innovations are normally that there are normally not so many innovations anymore because they are very big, they are very old, and they are maybe sometimes also a little bit old-fashioned. Yeah, and not so much entrepreneurial. And this is one of the reasons why, for instance, in Berlin, there are departments like the factory, yeah, for instance, and in the factory, the content of the factory is to bring together. I'm sorry, to bring together old companies with young startups, so that they can learn from each other. Because, as I said, oftentimes it is very difficult for older companies to remain entrepreneurial over time. Yeah, and let me give you one quote from a very, very famous scientist from Japan. He's called Guy Kawasaki. Maybe you know him. He said, entrepreneurship is no longer a job title. It is a state of mind of people who want to change the future. And what does it mean? It means that oftentimes when people think about entrepreneurship, right? They think about startups. They think about let's say people who want to start a new company and so on. But the scientist Guy Kawasaki, he said, no, entrepreneurship is not only about starting a company. Entrepreneurship is a state of mind for everybody, for designers, for actors, for everybody, because you should not only think about old things, old-fashioned things, and so on, what everybody told you. You should also think about what can I, as an actor, what can I, as a designer, what can I change to remain entrepreneurial, not only to do what other people tell me, not only to do what other people did. I should also think about how can I change the world, and not only to do what people told me. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is not very easy, and many people say I have enough to do with the things I do in my job, but this is only an opinion of this guy Guy Kawasaki, just to show you that many people are of the opinion that entrepreneurship is not only about startups, but is also a state of mind, right? Here, I prepared a slide for you with the process chain of entrepreneurship. What does it mean, ladies and gentlemen? It means that oftentimes when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's more or less away from an idea, yeah, to finalizing this idea into a project, into a product, into a whatever you have at the end of the day, right? And oftentimes at the beginning there is the opportunity, yeah, and many times it is or oftentimes it is the case that young entrepreneurs, young people who try to start with a company, yeah, they say, oh, I realized that, for instance, when we take a look at the market, yeah, that there is a big market opportunity because in the field, for instance, of sport or of renting a tennis court or whatever, I see that oftentimes it occurs that this and this and this is a problem and we want to change it. Yeah. Then this is the recognizing process. Yeah. It means that people like the young startup guys I just introduced, yeah, they realized or recognize that there is this opportunity, yeah, and as I said, they feel that there is an opportunity for a product, for a process, or for a new company, yeah. Then they try to evaluate this kind of process, yeah, because this is oftentimes what many people do wrong, yeah, when they are of the opinion, well, there is a good opportunity, let's start with a business. They make the failure that they make no evaluation, yeah, of the opportunity, and at the end of the day they realize that it was not a good idea, or they should change the idea, and so on. So the evaluation process is very important when you want to be successful. And then at the end of the day you have to use the thing you just introduced, you just realize as an opportunity, yeah. You have to take a look at the evaluation results, and after the evaluation you make, for instance, a prototype, or you start to produce a product, and so on, and you use it, yeah. And what we can say is that from the entrepreneur's point of view, the value of an entrepreneurial opportunity must be greater than the opportunity cost of neglecting other alternatives. This is, of course, also a thing. It's quite possible that you realize there is an opportunity, but maybe the opportunity costs, yeah, are much higher than the next alternative in the market. For instance, the opportunity cost to get a supplier, the search costs for for things you need to use for this product, and so on. This you have to keep in mind as well, that there are also possible opportunity costs, and these opportunity costs shall be not greater than the costs of an alternative, right? What we can say is, when we talk about entrepreneurship and when we talk about startups, starting a new company, there are triggers and barriers to starting a business. And maybe you are also familiar with this topic, because you maybe also thought about starting a business, or in your background as an NGO, yeah, that you also thought about behaving a little bit entrepreneurial, right? And you made the or you realized that there are some trigger and barriers when you did this. And factors that influence potential entrepreneurs in their founding decisions are, for instance, the material remuneration or the financial incentives. Yeah, many people who start a business, they think, when I'm successful in starting a business, I will be rich at the end of the day. Yeah, and this is what motivates them a lot: the financial incentives, right? Right. Then another point, which is oftentimes successful or important for an entrepreneur, is the creativity. Yeah, when you are an entrepreneur, you can use your talents, you can create something new, you can also realize your dreams. Yeah, and when I was a little bit younger, I had an event company. And what we did is, this is nothing special. We organized events, yeah, in my hometown. And for me, the creativity was much more important than the financial incentives, because I was able to do something new. I could also use my talents. Yeah, and this was something I really loved when I started this business a couple of years ago. Then another thing which influence an entrepreneur is the so-called pursuit of independence. Yeah, and the pursuit of independence, it means that you are able to be your own boss. And this is also something which is important for entrepreneurs, because as you can realize, when you are working in a company, of course, oftentimes it is a very great atmosphere, and it is nice, and you can do also your own things. But it's also quite possible that you're working in a company with a boss who always tells you what to do. Yeah, and when you are an entrepreneur, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, you are your own boss. And last but not least, you can realize own concepts. This is also something which is important for excuse me. This is also something which is important for young entrepreneurs. You can do whatever you want. You can realize own concepts. But then at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, there are, of course, also some barriers to start a business. For instance, yeah, a lack of resources, a lack of management, a lack of marketing skills. And this is something I realized with my own startup. Yeah, at the moment, I have an own startup as well. And actually, Niklas wanted to introduce me. I don't know if he did this, but let me briefly tell you what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah, I started a startup a couple of years ago. Yeah, and what we are doing is, we implemented a software for augmented reality. And actually, we worked together until this year with some coders from the Ukraine. And if I'm allowed, or if I may tell you my experience with the coders from the Ukraine, I can tell you that, in my opinion, these are one of the best worldwide. So you can be very proud with the knowledge of the IT people from your country. But, and this is what I wanted to tell you, with my startup, I make the experience that I have a lack of resources as well. For instance, marketing skills. I'm not an expert in the field of coding and so on. Luckily, you are able to find people, for instance, in the Ukraine, which are very talented and which are experts. Yeah, but this could be also a barrier to starting a business. Then compliance costs for tax, for law, for regulations, and so on. This could be also a barrier to start a business. And then at the end of the day, starting a business often turns out to be more difficult and risky than original thought. Yeah, and this is also something I made as an experience. Yeah, remember the slide before? Yeah, when we talk about opportunity taking. Yeah, at the beginning, oftentimes when you start a business, you think about all the opportunities which are in the market, and you are very happy. Yeah, and you say, well, there is an opportunity, and let's start a business, and so on. And at the end of at the beginning, everything seems to be fantastic. But once you start a business, yeah, you see that it's oftentimes more difficult, it's more risky, then you need money, and you see that financing a startup is a very difficult process, and so on. So what we can say is, yeah, when we wrap up, we can say that there are oftentimes factors that trigger entrepreneurship, but as I said, there are oftentimes also barriers to start a business. And when we made an interview in Germany, yeah, and we asked students, have you ever thought about getting involved in starting a business? Yeah, we saw that in Germany, entrepreneurship is not such a big deal compared to the Anglo-Saxon countries like, for instance, the US or the UK. In Germany, when we ask students, yeah, in a survey, have you ever thought about getting involved in starting a business? People said in Germany, 20.8%, that means nearly 21% said never. Yeah, 41% said, oh, maybe a little bit, but not so much. Yeah, repeatedly, 23%. Yeah, and when you compare this with, let's say, the international survey, we see that, for instance, when you take a look at planned concrete time plan in Germany, 0.8% said yes, yeah, but in an international survey, people said 2.8%. Yeah, so what we can see here is that starting a business in Germany is not very common. Also, at the moment, it changes a little bit, right? Especially in regions like Berlin, in regions like Hamburg, or in regions like Munich. It looks a little bit different, but nevertheless, entrepreneurship in Germany compared to worldwide is not so much, not so much a deal, compared to worldwide. So when we talk about entrepreneurship in a more practical way, we have to ask ourselves, so what is entrepreneurship all about? Or let's say it more so, what is successful entrepreneurship all about? Is it all about the technology? Yeah, when we take a look at successful entrepreneurs, successful startup, is it more or less about the technology? Because when we say there are probably hundreds or even thousands of individuals around the world who have had the same idea you had, yeah, is it at the end of the day the technology which is so important? We can say technology is normally not usually the first most important element, and sometimes the answer isn't technology at all, but identify a differentiated technology or business solution that runs the competition and provides the basis for market growth is essential. And if you are easy to copy, other players with more resources will do so quickly if the market is promising. That means that when we take a look at very successful startups, we can say is that, of course, you need a well thought technology. And you also need, a technology which is not easy to copy, ladies and gentlemen. But what we also can say is, when we take a look at different startups worldwide, we can say that technology is oftentimes not the first most important element. Yeah? Why? Other things are more important. So for instance, the team. Yeah? A good way to think of a product, it is that it is a representation of the genius of people who created it. Yeah? A great team can create a great product. Yeah? A not so good team will also or always create a not so good product. Yeah? Build a team of people who are experienced in the market and technology space with the leadership energy, domain knowledge, and commitment to lead the company success. And that, ladies and gentlemen, this is something I can tell you from our own experience. Oftentimes, when people start a business, when people try to become an entrepreneur, they think that the idea, they think that the technology is the most important thing. But from my own experience and from the experience I have from other startups, I can tell you that this is not the case. Yeah, oftentimes one of the most important aspects is the team. And when you, for instance, take a look at investors, at VCs, venture capitalists, for instance, in America, in the US, they oftentimes say that we are looking not so much at the idea of a team, we are taking more a closer look at a team in general, because we are of the opinion, yeah, that if there is a very qualified and good team, they can be successful with every kind of idea, with every kind of technology. Of course, this is rather a very extreme position, yeah, but nevertheless, it makes clear that for people who are experts in the field of entrepreneurship, they know that the team behind an idea, behind a startup, is very important, right? Because if the team is a real team, and if the team consists of team players, right, they will be successful at the end of the day. And there are a couple of different team building processes, but I want to skip this page because this is, I think, not so much important and necessary and interesting for you. Then, if a company has the right market idea and fails because the timing is wrong, it still fails. It still fails. What does this mean? It means that, ladies and gentlemen, it's not so much only about the technology and not so much only about the team. It is also about the timing. And this is also an aspect I told you a couple of slides before, when I said you have to be very fast because oftentimes you want to have the first mover advantage, yeah, and that means that this first mover advantage is important because you want to be faster than your competitor, right? And when you want to be faster than your competitor, it means that you have to be fast. So the timing of getting out in the market is very important as well. Then, ladies and gentlemen, it's not only the timing, it's also about the business plan. So, here. Yeah. A development or develop a value proposition and a business plan that articulate the company's value, strategy, and plan and attract the required capital. So what you also need is, ladies and gentlemen, you do not need only a good technology or a team or let's say a timing strategy. You also need a good business plan, especially when you want to attract investors. Yeah, but you have to keep in mind that business plans for the sake of writing them are useless. Yeah, it is not important that you have a business plan just that you can say your investors or the banks, hey, here, take a look, I have a business plan. Yeah, and it's also the case that inventors or investors, sorry, do not like reading through hundreds of pages. Yeah, if your pitch is poor, nobody is going to read your business plan. Yeah, that means that a business plan is important. Yeah, but only if it is rather short and if it is rather interesting, yeah, for the investors. Yeah, and then, ladies and gentlemen, money is of course also very important for startups, but money will not be provided on the basis of an idea. Yeah, it needs lots of homework and understanding of unit economics. Yeah, and you have to keep in mind that big venture capital rounds are very rare and big exits are rare as well. That means you have you need a complex things, a complex let's say package of certain aspects. For instance, you need a good business plan, you need a good team, you need a good technology, you need a good timing strategy, right? And ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, of course, you need money when you want to be successful at the end of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, and before I continue with some business models, I would try to take the opportunity to ask you if there are so far open questions, if there are something you would like to discuss, if there is something you are curious about. If this is not the case, yeah, I will continue. Yeah, but ladies and gentlemen, please keep in mind that whenever you have a question, please feel free to ask. I would be happy to have a discussion with you about some things about entrepreneurship. Now is here a chat. Where can I see you? So I can't see at the moment chat. I don't know why. Sorry, I can't see the chat at the moment. But you also can take your microphone if there are some, if there are open questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about entrepreneurship, right? The question is, why is entrepreneurship so important? Yeah, you may ask, or you might ask the question. So you are, if I'm right, you are more or less in the field of NGOs, right? And you may ask yourself, why is it for us, for instance, so important to talk about entrepreneurship if we are not really entrepreneurs? Yeah, then we can say, first of all, as I told you, and remember the quotation from this guy, Guy Kawasaki, entrepreneurship is more or less a state of mind. Yeah, first of all. So to think about a certain aspect in an entrepreneurial manner or in an entrepreneurial perspective is also very fruitful. It doesn't matter if you are an actor, a designer, somebody working for an NGO, or so on. This can also be a very fruitful perspective. Yeah, then entrepreneurial activity is a driving force of the world economy. Yeah, this is also something which is important. And without entrepreneurial thinking, without entrepreneurial activity, the long-term economical outcome would be not so high than compared to a situation with entrepreneurial activity. Then we can say that even if you are not an entrepreneur, yeah, entrepreneurs are increasingly becoming your customers, your competitors, and your employers. Yeah, so this could also be for you as somebody who has an own NGO or somebody who is working for an NGO. Yeah, you will work together with customers, yeah, who are entrepreneurs. You maybe have a competitor, yeah, which has an entrepreneurial background, or maybe you have some employees who are who were entrepreneurs who want to become an entrepreneur. So that means that even for somebody who is of the opinion, well, entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs in general, this is not a basic or important thing for me. It can also be important for you. Why? Because, as I said, you will deal with entrepreneurship, you will deal with entrepreneurs. Nevertheless, if you are an entrepreneur, or if you are a guy who started a startup or not. Yeah, and then the people who, let's say, graduating from university, we can say that these are, or this is the entrepreneurial generation. Yeah, young people, it doesn't matter if we call them Generation Y, Generation Z, and so on, realize that there is a trend towards independent thinking, and they have also strong values. Yeah, so the generation which is now coming, yeah, the younger generation, they feel more about strong values. They feel more about independent thinking. Yeah, oftentimes many rather young people, they think that our own business is a primary career goal. So especially for younger people, an own business is something which is very nice to achieve. Yeah, and then we can say that especially in Europe, investment banking and strategy consulting is for people graduating from university in these days not so much attractive or important, comparing to starting an own startup or working for a venture capitalist or a startup, right? Then what we can say is, when we take a look at doing business in the 21st century, we can say we realize that we have a very let's say a certain environment and atmosphere for doing business. Yeah, we realize that at the moment the environment for doing business is highly competitive and highly dynamic. Yeah, which on the one hand makes it sometimes difficult for established, let's say, old-fashioned companies, yeah, to stay competitive viable, Yeah, why? Because it's highly dynamic, but sometimes it makes it more easy for entrepreneurs, yeah, for people starting a business, because they are very dynamic, and oftentimes they are, yeah, let's say, um, they rather know how to deal with this kind of environment. Yeah, we see that the 21st century is characterized by fluid firm and industry boundaries dominated by an innovative managerial mindset. As I said before, yeah, people, especially younger people, but not only younger people, but people, let's say, who are in the first steps of their business, they are oftentimes, or they have oftentimes, a very innovative managerial mindset. Yeah, and they are truly global and facing a multitude of institutional settings. Yeah, that means the 21st century is I would say, a not very easy century for doing a business, but there are a lot of opportunities, especially for people and for companies starting to do a new business and starting to, let's say, thinking entrepreneurial. But to put it in a nutshell, to make a short wrap up, we can say, when we take a look at the 21st century, especially from a business perspective, we can say that there are four words which describe this atmosphere very clearly. We can say that there is change. We can say that there is complexity. We can say that there is chaos. And last but not least, we can say that there is contradiction. Yeah. And when you take a look at these four words, you realize that these are also words which are suitable for entrepreneurs. Yeah. Because remember, yeah, when we talk about the guys talking about what is entrepreneurship, yeah, for instance, we talk about Schumpeter, we talked about Knight and Drucker and so on. And they said that dealing with entrepreneurship is to deal with change, to make something new, yeah, and to deal also with chaos, yeah. And so you can realize that the atmosphere at the moment is actually very beneficial and fruitful for entrepreneurs, because when you want to deal with change, chaos, and so on, you are right in an atmosphere at the moment. Then I would like to follow up with the so-called tentative mind map. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we talked a little bit about what makes a startup a successful startup. Now, I would like to follow up with yeah, a mind map, just to make clear what we really need, or what we have to think about when we talk about successful startups and successful entrepreneurial activity. Yeah. First of all, yeah, what we have to think about when we talk about starting a business, we have to think about four different aspects. We have to think about the founder and the team, but we have to think about the opportunity and the resources as well. And when we talk about the resources, we have to think about the resource availability, the institutional aspects, and the economic climate. Yeah, that means that there are so many different aspects which are responsible for, let's say, or to become a successful entrepreneur, yeah, that we have to think not only about the resources in general, but we have to think about, for instance, also about the economic climate. For instance, at the moment, yeah, where we face an economic climate which is not very strong, yeah. For instance, because we have the Corona pandemic, yeah. People are not very sure if they lose their jobs. People don't know when, for instance, in Germany, they are allowed to open their shops again, because at the moment it's not allowed for many small shops like restaurants, for retailers and so on, to open their business. That we can say at the moment the economic climate is not very yeah, let's say strong or successful, yeah. And so we face at the moment yeah, a not very beneficial or fruitful economic climate. So at the moment, when we take a look from a more resources point of view, starting a business is certainly not the best thing you can think about. But you should also think about the founder and the team. So here you have to think about leadership, communication. You have to think about skills and knowledge, but you also have to think about the labor market. Yeah. For instance, when you have a strong labor market, yeah, for instance, when we take a look at countries, or when we take a look at regions, for instance, in Germany, like Bavaria, yeah, in Bavaria, in many regions of Bavaria, there is not a very high unemployment rate. That means the labor market is very strong, yeah. And when you think about starting a business in the region where the labor market is very strong, yeah, it's quite possible that it's difficult for you to get qualified people, yeah. And this has also an influence of a successful startup, because you can be very intelligent and very strong. You can have very strong leadership skills as a founder, but if you are not able to get a good team, because the labor market is very strong and people prefer working for a big company like Volkswagen or Daimler, yeah, because the wages are very high, yeah, and they say, I rather prefer working for a company like Volkswagen, because the wages are very high compared to becoming an entrepreneur, yeah. This has also an influence of if the startup is successful or not. Then we have to take a look at opportunities, of course, yeah, about the customers, about the trend, and about the uncertainty, yeah. If if there are a lot of potential customers, the opportunity is rather high. But if there is not a very high or if there is not a very high base of customers, then the opportunity is not so strong, or it's not so high, or rather low. Ladies and gentlemen, so now I would like to give you some definitions of what is really entrepreneurship after we talked about entrepreneurship for quite a while. Remember, when I talked about entrepreneurship at the beginning, yeah, when I talked about Peter Drucker, when I talked about Schumpeter and so on, these were guys, scientists, who talked about entrepreneurship in a more general way. Yeah. Now I would like to follow up with some guys who talk about entrepreneurship in a more practical way or in a more direct way. So what we can say is, when we talk about entrepreneurship, yeah, we say that the scholarly examination and how, by whom, and with what affects opportunities to create future goods and services are discovered, evaluated, and exploited. Yeah. So here, Shane and Venka Tadawan, they say that entrepreneurship is more or less about creating future goods and services. Yeah. Dan Stevenson says the pursuit of opportunities without regard to resource currently controlled. Morris, yeah, the process through which individuals and teams create value by bringing together unique packages of resources inputs to exploit opportunities in the environment. And Penrose, which is rather old, entrepreneurship is a slippery concept because it is so closely associated with the temperament of personal qualities of individuals. He is of the opinion that it's not so much the team which is responsible for the success of entrepreneurial activities. It's more about, let's say, the qualities of individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, and now I would like to follow up with taking risks. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, as I said before, yeah, when you think about becoming an entrepreneur, right? Of course, oftentimes you think about things like becoming your own boss. You think about big exits at the end of the day. Maybe you also think about, you can do whatever you want and you can be creative. We talked about that before. Yeah. But ladies and gentlemen, becoming an entrepreneur is, of course, risky as well. And this is one of the reasons why in Germany, many people prefer not to become an entrepreneur, but to work for companies like Volkswagen or for big consulting companies, yeah, because for them it seems to be more safe. But when we take a look at the risk of becoming an entrepreneur more closely, we can say that we distinguish 4 different risks. Yeah, for the first risk is the so-called social risk. Yeah, and here we can say is that neglecting of family and friends or to fail is a failure. Yeah, especially in Germany, and this is very much a difference compared to the Anglo-Saxon countries, like for instance America. We can say that in Germany, oftentimes it is the case that when you try to become an entrepreneur and you are not successful, then oftentimes it's like a stigma, yeah, that people say, you were not successful, yeah, you are a poor guy, let's say so, yeah. Then it is the opposite to the US. In America, it's oftentimes the case that when you are an entrepreneur and you are not successful, yeah, you at the end of the day you have an entrepreneurial track record, and you can say, for instance, hey, take a look at my entrepreneurial track record. Yeah, I already started a couple of businesses in the past, and nobody asked you if they were successful. People say, wow, you are an entrepreneurial guy. You are a serial entrepreneur. Yeah, and this is really, really great. Yeah, stay on the track. Yeah, and stay to be an entrepreneur. Another social risk is, of course, the neglection of family and friends, because oftentimes, yeah, you are very busy as an entrepreneur, and oftentimes, yeah, you do not have so much time, yeah, for your friends, for your family, and so on. And this is, of course, also something which can be very risky. Then the financial risk. On the first hand, yeah, personal money, mortgages or loans. Yeah, when you start with your own money, yeah, this could be also very risky for you, because when you, for instance, try with a loan, or when you try to invest personal money, and the startup is not successful at the end of the day, it's of course very risky for you. Yeah. Another financial risk is, of course, the thing that, for instance, when you start a business, you are working a couple of years for this business. Yeah. And then this business is not successful. It's quite possible that you do not lose money because it was not a personal money, but you always have to think about also the money you could have earned instead of starting a business. For instance, when you start your own business, yeah, and you do it for 5 years, and at the end of the day, it is not successful. Yeah, maybe you do not lose money, but if you wouldn't have start your business, and instead of this, let's say, work for Volkswagen or for Deutsche Bank, for instance, you could have earned a lot of money, and this is also a financial risk. Then, as I said, a track record. You do not have no more solid and well-paid jobs. This is also something for your track record, because oftentimes it's difficult for people in Germany who people, as I said, who started a company which is not very successful. Yeah, as I said, in the US, it's quite different. People in the US say, hey, wow, you are an entrepreneurial guy. This is not the case in Germany. Yeah. And in Germany, it is the case that once you fail, it's difficult to get another job, because you do not have such track record with good jobs you did in the past. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, it's also a health challenge, because entrepreneurship is hard work, mentally and physically. Yeah, physically, remember when I said entrepreneurship is all about late nights, small meals. Yeah, this is of course something which is physically a challenge, but also mentally, because you don't know if you are successful at the end of the day. Sometimes you don't know if you get financed, yeah, the next month. Sometimes you don't know if you can finance your family, and so on. So this is also a risk which you have to keep in mind. But ladies and gentlemen, here are also some examples why it's worth it, yeah, to do and to live with all the risks I just explained. Yeah, you know, many of these guys, Guy Kawasaki, a serial entrepreneur and scientist. Yeah, you know the quotation. Bill Gates, you're all familiar with. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs. Yeah, but Also, for instance, in France, Estée Lauder, yeah, maybe you know the company, yeah. Or for example, in Germany, Robert Bosch, Bertha Benz, Carl Benz, or Werner von Siemens. These were rather old, but nevertheless very successful entrepreneurs. Yeah. So when you talk about entrepreneurship, you should not only think about all the risks, you also should think about successful entrepreneurs when you think about that. I prepared here a small video for you, but I would like to skip it because I already talked for 1 hour, so keep it rather short. Here, I also prepared another video for you. This is a story about Airbnb. And let me quickly make a wrap up about what is the story no one believed. Yeah, this short video is about the story of the founders of Airbnb. And I already talked about Airbnb at the beginning of my lecture. Remember when I said, and this is what the story of this quick video is all about, right? I talked here about the story about Airbnb. And at the beginning of this story, ladies and gentlemen, it was the point that the founders of Airbnb, they wanted to think about a so-called blue market. And what does it mean? Yeah, it means that when we talk about a blue market, it means that we talk about a completely new market nobody knew before. Yeah. For instance, think about Airbnb. Before Airbnb, when we talked about or when we thought about the markets for accommodation, we thought about let's say hotels, maybe also let's say holiday flats, yeah, in holiday destinations, but this was it. Yeah. And a blue market was now the invention of Airbnb, because it was a revolution of the whole market for accommodations. Yeah, a completely new market. Yeah, a so-called blue ocean. Yeah, a blue market, a new market. Yeah, because the founder of Airbnb, they believed it could be possible that people they rent or they give their own flat as or instead people could rent a private flat instead of a hotel room. So this was a revolution of the whole market for accommodation. Yeah, and this was something people couldn't believe before, because before of Airbnb, yeah, when people thought about the market for accommodation, they thought about other hotels, they thought about, let's say, how can we make a hotel smarter? Yeah, how can we, let's say, change the process of renting a hotel room and so on? Yeah, but nobody talked about or nobody thought even about how can we change the market for accommodations. And this is what this movie here is all about. It's all about the founders of Airbnb and what they really did when they when they thought about the market for accommodation. And when we talk about, now I would like to follow up with my presentation. When we talk about entrepreneurs, we oftentimes ask ourselves, who is a successful entrepreneur? Yeah, and Yeah. And when we talk about successful entrepreneurs, sometimes we take a look from a more psychological perspective. Yeah. Who really is a successful entrepreneur, and who is not so much a successful entrepreneur? Yeah. And from a more psychological point of view, we can say that people oftentimes have different attributes. Yeah, for instance, the risk-taking propensity of people, the art of independency, the extraversion of people is different, and this is the reason why we can say that people act differently in the same situation. Yeah, and maybe you also made this experienced for your own. For instance, that you said, or yeah, that you make the experience. Many people, let's say act differently. Also, they are in the same situation. People, on the one hand, they are more risky compared to other people, and this is where the psychological the psychological yeah science starts, when people try to answer the question why many entrepreneurs are successful and others are not so successful. So I would like to skip the next parts because we do not have so much time, and because I think they are not so interesting for you. But what we can say is, when we follow up, many founders who think of starting their own business do not know where to start. Their thoughts often revolve around the name, design of stationery, or the choice of legal form, even before they have developed the product or the service. Yeah, and we, as a scientist, we developed a so-called lean startup approach to help people when they think about starting of a new business. Yeah, and what we can say is that, depending on the definition, today 58 new products are required to produce a successful one. And the question is, why are some startups more successful and survive the first month, and others are not so successful? And what we can say is that successful startups, they oftentimes follow a lean startup approach, and this lean startup approach brings it with them that they are, at the end of the day, more successful than other ones. Yeah, and what we also can say is that the founders of successful startups do not stubbornly pursue their original ideas, but quickly learn what their customer really want and how to use their scarce resources to make the best deals. Yeah, successful founders and their startups are often characterized by their ability to learn very quickly and dramatically change their plans and products over time toward the feedbacks. And what we can say is, when we take a look at successful startups, yeah, we see that oftentimes the successful idea is not the original idea they had before. Why? Because um, 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 what we can say is that, for instance, when we take a look at successful startups, we see that they first had an idea they make or they thought it would be a good opportunity for them. But at the end of the day, when they evaluate this idea, when they made their first prototype, when they went first into the market, they thought that the customers, they wanted a completely different thing than they first invented. Yeah, but they did not stubbornly pursue their original ideas, but they thought about the things the people really need. Yeah, and they quickly adapted this idea to the need of the people. And this was the reason why many startups were at the end of the day successful compared to the startups who did not think about the aspects the people really need. Yeah. So what we can say is successful startups oftentimes do not have a perfect plan, but they have or they found a way to come up with a working and sustainable business model. Yeah. And this is also the way this is perfectly described by the lean startup approach. Yeah, which aims to implement iteratively as quickly as possible and without high resources the use of an idea successful. And the focus of this approach is not to be in formalities or financial issues, but to simply start and test in quick, short cycles with potential customers whether the idea is really successful and finds a market. At the same time, it is iteratively changed based on what has been learned and possibly also improved by the rapid failure of the originally idea. Fast failure allows a low use of resources, formalities, and financing issues can almost always be postponed to a later day. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, that successful startups oftentimes, yeah, they did not think about everything which is necessary for them in complex and long-term manner. They easily start with their idea. For instance, yeah, people who thought that it would be the right thing to, let's say, to make events, to make money, yeah, or to make a successful startup. They did not think half a year or a year of what kind of event and how it could be financed. They did not think about, let's say, how to deal with taxes and with laws and so on. Successful startups just made an event, and they took a serious look at what people really or what customers really wanted. Yeah, for instance, what drinks they need, what music they like, and so on. And of course, the first event oftentimes is then not a successful one. Yeah, but you learned a lot, and you quickly adapt what you learned with your new business. Yeah, and this is oftentimes what is really successful compared to a startup which thought about the business idea a long time. And at the center of the lean startup approach is the problem, also called customer pain point. And a good business idea usually solves a problem, even though potential customers might not know they have the problem. Yeah. Once a problem idea has been found, it is important to understand and describe it exactly. And therefore, you can use the so-called Kipling method with the 6W, and this is a very successful method. Yeah. So when you talk about your idea, yeah, when you talk about starting a business, you should think about the 6 different aspects. For instance, you should think about the point, what is the problem? When does the problem occur? When does the problem occur? Why is the problem occurring? And who has the problem? And how do the problem look like, right? When we talk about the lean canvas, we have to say that as an entrepreneur, one of the most important tasks you can perform is getting your ideas out from your head into a format so that you can communicate that with others. And in the past, this usually meant a well-researched business plan. But this would rather take weeks, more like months to create. Yeah. And what we think is more suitable is the so-called lean canvas. And the lean canvas helps quickly to formulate possible business models, product launches, campaigns, and variations of, and communicate this with possible stakeholders. Having the lean canvas as a visual guide makes this part communicating the model idea so much more effective and the most valuable function of the tour. Yeah. So the lean canvas uses the same 9 blocks concept, except they've been modified slightly to suit the needs, purposes, requirements of lean startup. The lean canvas is a perfect one-page format for brainstorming possible business models. The block guide you through logical steps, starting with your customer problems, right through to your unfair advantage. Yeah. And here is what I would like to introduce to you, the so-called lean canvas. And the lean canvas is a method which help you, but also your stakeholders, your investors, and so on. On the one hand, helps you to very, very easy explain your idea and your product to the people you want to introduce the aspects to. But also, yeah, it is also a good tool where you are able to change your idea. I said before, remember, successful startups are oftentimes successful in adapting their ideas to the needs the people, the customers have. And with this method, you are very easy able to change your things, because you can put it on the wall and erase some things and write it down new. The 9 concepts of this method are, first of all, the problem. Yeah. Normally, when you start your idea, you start with a problem. Yeah, because you say, okay, this is when I take a look at the market, I see that here or there is a problem. Yeah. And for this problem, I also have a solution. Yeah. For instance, remember when I said at the beginning, yeah, there are a couple of guys, and they say, oh, there is a problem in renting tennis courts because it took so long time, or I don't know, there are other problems. And this is our solution for this problem. Then the third aspect, the third field, is the so-called unique value proposition. Yeah, it is a single and clear, compelling message that states why you are different and why it's worth buying. Yeah. The fourth field is the so-called unfair advantage. Why is your idea better compared to others, and why can't it necessarily or easily copied or bought? Yeah. Then these are the customer segments. Where or how do your target customers look like? Yeah, it is also the channels. Which are the right channels for you? Which are, let's say, the ways, the paths to your customers? Yeah, and what is also important for you are the key metrics. Yeah, which are the key activities you have to measure. For instance, yeah, the number of the customers, yeah, the number of the retention of the customers, yeah. How does the cost structure look like? Yeah, for instance, in hosting, in people working for you, distribution costs, customer acquisition costs, and so on. And last but not least, the revenue streams. Yeah, for instance, the revenue model, the life value, the revenue, and so on. Yeah. So this called Lean Canvas, ladies and gentlemen, is a very good model for you if you want to start a business, just to write down the very most important aspects you have to follow when you think about starting a business. Now I was able to see the chats. I saw a couple of questions. I hope I remember them all. First of all, somebody asked if I could tell you a little bit more about the business of augmented reality I have. Sure. What we did is we invented a software which enables companies to use augmented reality without a big knowledge, and very flexible and not very costly. Yeah, so normally, especially in Germany, it is the case that companies, when they want to use AR, augmented reality, they go to a company, and this company makes it for them. Yeah, but with our software, it is possible to use it as a company without asking let's say a company to do so. And you can imagine it is on the one hand more flexible, because when you do it for your own, for instance, yeah, now here I have a bottle, and I'm pretty sure you know augmented reality, what it's all about. When you take your cell phone as a viewer, and you go on the picture here, you see on the cell phone, which is responsible for you, what is necessary for you, what you make as an AR feature here. Yeah, and you can imagine then when you do it for your own, it's on the one hand more flexible, and on the other hand it's not so costly, because you can do it for your own. Another question was if I can give the slides to you. I would say I give you in the links, I give you the whole slides. I send it to Irina, and she can put it for you, of course, and there are all the links and so on. And if you still have questions, you can also write me an email. I will give you, or Irina has my email address. Please feel free to ask if you still have questions. But now I would like to follow up, and please feel free to ask if there are still questions. Sometimes I have a problem with the chat function, but now I was able to see it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I talked a little bit about what is all entrepreneurship all about, and why is it necessary to think about entrepreneurship. Then I talked about what makes an entrepreneur a successful entrepreneur. Yeah, for instance, yeah, I said that successful entrepreneurs, they adapt their concepts to customer needs. That means they don't think about the original idea, but they are willingly to change the idea if they make the suggestion, or if they make the experience, sorry, that it is necessary, yeah, that the people need different kind of things, yeah. And I said that we made the experience that successful startups, they oftentimes start with the idea and they don't think about the things behind the idea, like the costs and so on, very for a long time. They just start and try to see what the customer really needs, right? And here I have the 9 fields of the lean canvas, but I already talked about that. It starts with the problem, and then you have the solution, but here you have the customer segments, yeah, and we can say that the problem and customer segments can be viewed as intrinsically connected. Without a customer segment in mind, you can't think of a problem, and vice versa, right? So that this oftentimes goes hand in hand, yeah. Then what we can also say is that what we also can say is that after the problem and the customer, there is a solution, yeah. And finding a solution to a problem is the golden egg. I mean, this is also something which is normal for you. This is another chat here. So I said we have the problem, we have the customer segment, and then we have the solution, yeah. So when you once realize there's a problem and you see what is the customer behind it, then you can also find the solution, yeah. We talked about the unique value proposition. Of course, this is something when it's good, it can't be copied by the customer or by the competitor. Let's say it's so, yeah. The channels, remember I said the channels are the way to the path to your customer. This is really important. For instance, you can talk about or you can think about social media channels, but you can also make some posters in the streets and so on. Then the revenue streams, yeah, how you price your business. I talked about that as well. The cost structure. Here you should list all the operational costs for taking the business to market. Yeah, this is also something I talked about. And then, of course, the key metrics. The key metrics, yeah, which is also something something important. And last but not least, we have also let's say the unfair advantage. The unfair advantage, which is important, because the unfair advantage is necessary when you want to have, let's say, a USP, and nobody can copy it very easily, right? So now I already prepared the business plan for you, but I would like to skip it, yeah. Then I already talked, or I will already, or I a little bit talked about the financing, but now here I organized for you different financing aspects, but I would like to skip it as well, yeah. The pitch deck, because we do not have so much time. I would like to end with social entrepreneurship. And as I heard from Irina and Niklas, that you are all with an NGO background. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, you might ask, what is the connection between NGO and entrepreneurship? I assume that you are all familiar with the field of social entrepreneurship, but let me briefly finish with the definition of social entrepreneurship, and also two or three NGOs which influenced social entrepreneurship a lot. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you all know that, but nevertheless, I think this is a good finish for this topic of entrepreneurship. So social entrepreneurship uses business to offer new ideas for or with a wide-scale social and environmental impact. Social entrepreneurship unites the passion of a social mission with an image of business-like discipline, innovation, and determination. Many social entrepreneurs launch whole new ventures, applying innovative and often risk-taking approaches to create scalable solutions, which includes inventing new products and services. Others join existing social enterprises aligned with their interests and passions. Entrepreneurs create sustainable organizations which can be set up as non-profit or traditional companies, with the overall goal to achieve large-scale, sustainable, and systematic change through new ventures. So you see that you with an NGO background have also much to do with entrepreneurship, oftentimes with social entrepreneurship. Yeah, and what you can say is, in their bid to find innovative solution for overarching social problems, social entrepreneurs are backed by several social conscious individuals and organizations. And here I put a list of not 5, but let's say 3 non-profit organizations that have been inspiring social entrepreneurs to create and sustain positive social change. And I'm pretty sure you all know many of these social entrepreneur, or let's say NGOs. First of all, it starts with Ashoka, yeah, and it was founded by Bill Drayton in 1981. We can say that first of all, it was innovators for the public, we can say that it started with an initial social venture capital of $50,000, and today supports more than 3,000 entrepreneurs from over 70 countries. Yeah, the social entrepreneurs are selected or are elected as Ashoka Fellows, and the first fellow was elected in India in the founding years. Then we have the so-called Skoll Foundation. The Skoll Foundation was founded in 1999 in California, and has been facilitating the connection and celebration of inventors and social entrepreneurs committed to solving the most pressing problems of the world. Its Skoll World for Social Entrepreneurship has been driving social entrepreneurs to trigger and sustain positive social change. Yeah? And last but not least, I would like to introduce the so-called Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. The Schwab Foundation has been providing regional, national, and global platforms for the promotion of social entrepreneurship since its inception in 1998 in Geneva, Switzerland. The NGO holds social entrepreneurs, an important catalyst for social innovation and progress, inspires them to foster social change. Ladies and gentlemen, and due to our time restriction, I would like to finish now with my lecture about entrepreneurship. But before I open the floor for questions, let me very quickly summarize why entrepreneurship could be important for you with an NGO background as well. Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, the entrepreneurial background, or the entrepreneurial state of mind, which I introduced at the beginning of my lecture, is a very successful one, even for somebody with an NGO background. Yeah, then you, even if you are not an entrepreneurial company, yeah, you will have to deal with entrepreneurial guys as well. For instance, you have customers, you have clients, you have competitors with an entrepreneurial background. And then, last but not least, you see that many NGOs, yeah, often influence social entrepreneurs as well. So you are important with an NGO background, even for many different entrepreneurs, especially social entrepreneurs. Yeah. And before I finish, let me thank you that you that you are here and share the passion with me. And ladies and gentlemen, before I finished, once again, the information that I give you, of course, the slides. And if there are still open questions, please feel free. Otherwise, thank you very much for your attention.